we get over here, it's going to eventually force price out of this range. And generally, you get a big move outside of that range. So I would continue to remain bullish on Bitcoin here as long as you don't start trading below this lower trend line. As long as you stay in here, I would remain bullish. And I think, again, whether it's into year end or January, a spot ETF is coming, at least one, and you'll get that at least one sort of surge to the upside.
There'll be new information. The DOJ is going to come into Binance and they're going to be going through their books and they're going to have compliance officers in there for the next 2 to 3 years. So there could be more information that comes to light. But at this stage, it seems kind of more of like a middle ground between both extremes.
Now, during a news conference, we heard Attorney General Merrick Garland say that Binance failed to comply with federal laws and pretended to comply. He said Binance prioritized its profits over the safety of the American people.
When people say bull run, they automatically assume new all-time highs. And I'm a little skeptical on that at this stage. And understanding that you're still going to get pullbacks. In the short term, I think, and this is the disconnect, is smaller investors, the retail crowds, crypto Twitter, crypto X, they're assuming that as soon as it gets deployed or approved, you're going to see this new bull run to new all-time highs. I think that it's going to take a lot longer. Having a spot ETF, right, is a step in the right direction, but it's still not going to make grandma who's 90 years old put a large chunk of money into, right? So you have to understand it's going to take time. There's a trust that has to be built. And honestly, we've still seen continued kind of fraudulent activities, filings and so forth that have broken a lot of that trust, or at least it has to be built back up. So the spot ETF is one more piece of the puzzle that will make for a huge long-term value in Bitcoin and in cryptocurrency. But I think it's faulty to expect that you get an approval. And I do think honestly, you get one of those, what they call God candles, right? Because people will rush in. But honestly, I will be looking to short it. I will short into that and wait to buy once it pulls back.
Where do you see Bitcoin let's say through the holiday and into the first week of December?
So what we can see here is that we basically have what's called a wedge pattern building, and wedge pattern is an upsloping trend line here, and you have your flat top, which right here, and then just a couple days ago we hit that the day before we hit the low end. So as a wedge pattern tightens, right, as we get over here, it's going to eventually force price out of this range, and generally you get a big move outside of that range. So I would continue to remain bullish on Bitcoin here as long as you don't start trading below this lower trend line. As long as you stay in here, I would remain bullish. And I think, again, whether it's into year end or January, a spot ETF is coming, at least one, and you'll get that at least one sort of surge to the upside. So I like the price action here. I think, again, as long as it holds this level, which is right now around 36,000 or 35.5, you stay bullish on it and you can stay long. I think if anything, you're sticking with Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum in this situation. Number one, the altcoins have run tremendously already. So again, you have to ask yourself, how much more can Solana go up in this environment, right? Where it's getting a little too extended. You have to see if it pulls back. But I think also there's, the news specifically on the spot ETF is for Bitcoin. And so that's going to draw a lot of interest in. And I think it maybe bleeds over because obviously we've heard about potentially an Ethereum ETF coming out, a spot ETF there as well. And so I think those two lead horses benefit the most. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if money comes out of altcoins and actually goes into Bitcoin in that scenario where that approval comes out. The one thing I do want to mention too is I'm talking relatively bullishly on crypto, but I do want to just mention that there is still one small risk that crypto could have a big dump out. And that would be if the equity markets, in my opinion, were to see a major collapse, like 50, 60%. Let's say we go into a tailspin, inflation still is slightly elevated, and we see the Fed unable to print our way out of those scenarios and the economy goes into the pits. Then I do think I do worry in those situations that you could see Ethereum moving back to 1,100, Bitcoin possibly even 15,000 or lower.
We should be careful, though, of conflating this, which is Binance's activity, with these larger claims and narratives that commonly get proposed that Bitcoin or other crypto assets are such a huge problem for crime and illicit activity. When you look at the statistics, it's at like a fraction of 1% of all Bitcoin transactions have anything to do with illicit activity, and the totals across Bitcoin and even other digital assets, it is a very small part. It is so much smaller. The use of the dollar in illicit activity dwarfs the total sum of all financial crimes committed with Bitcoin or committed with other crypto assets. So it's important to hold both of those, that yes, Binance was a bad actor, but this shouldn't be used as evidence, in my opinion, that, it's some, referendum on Bitcoin. I think it's a 90% plus probability that we see a spot Bitcoin ETF approved in Q1 of next year. I think we're quite close. I think those firms have been going back and forth with the SEC. They've been in dialogues. They've been updating their filings. That's not something we've seen before. So previously, the SEC just denied the applications, but currently we're seeing those companies talk with the SEC, revise the filing, talk with the SEC, revise the filing. There's a back and forth going on there that's new and hasn't happened before. It makes me quite confident we're going to see that approval, as well as obviously the big names that are backing these things. I think the Ether ETF is much more speculative that approval happens in the same time frame, given some of these securities complaints. But I do think the Bitcoin ETF is very likely to be approved. And I think it's an important moment for the industry. There's two categories here. There is the kind of what I'd call like the mechanical category of X number of dollars go into that vehicle and buy Bitcoin. And that number's in the billions. So that drives up the price. There's just new dollars that couldn't access it before or wouldn't access it before that come in and buy it.